In Ribbon House, it was a very unique challenge we had to start from the beginning. When we started, because we already have worked on 5 to 6 projects before with the same person who is the contractor, and he's also happened to be the client for this particular project. So we were looking at a possibility where we were wanting to test the possibilities of space making and to push our boundaries with terms of creating double bend concrete structures, because concrete has to be cast into a certain volume. So to create those bend structures, we had to develop initial models, because the process how we have arrived at this particular solution, when he started the project, he actually talked about how can we make this house as a landmark or a masterpiece. So this was something that was a brief that was given to us. Though we had a requirement brief, when we started looking at what are the possibilities, what were the structures that were predominantly world famous, in how simpler ways it was possible, and looking at those different possibilities of creating masterpieces, we actually had a tour of projects where we have actually laid out completely onto a piece of wall where we created this different kind of masterpieces. And it was like a walkthrough where we actually looked at an analysis based on the feedback that what we actually liked in those kind of houses. So when we got to that particular point, and then the next step was to create something, because though the plans were made, and when we have developed those plans with terraces and kind of indoor and outdoor spaces, when we're creating a form of a structure, how uniquely we can use concrete and create something that we could challenge ourselves. So in that aspect, we were actually looking at different kind of curvilinear structures, and they were initially, when we created model, we actually brought a lot of 3D models to it. Then slowly the form keeps happening, but somehow it stuck to us, like where we could create structures which were like free flowing ribbons, and there were series of them which create those kind of cave like structures into it. And that was the initial idea when we first presented it to them, and he immediately liked it. It's like, then the challenge was, how do we build it? So that was a challenge. It was a good problem to have. So the challenges that we've looked at is about the complicacy of the structure, and we had a very prominent structural consultant who was working with us, whom when we discussed, we actually shown him the entire process of how we would want to make it, and he also took it as a challenge where we could create this kind of structure as a secondary element of structure. So then those initial ideas of how we have made those structure, when we had to get it to execute it, the challenge was also how do we prepare drawings of structure, because drawing is only a representation of what we want. So in that case, we actually had to develop a model and train the particular contractor to look at the model, and also the site team to look at the model and to derive dimensions from it. So this was a kind of process which was very unique, where we had to work with them again and again, check the casting, the shuttering and different times of it, and so that those curves can be freely casted in the way they are supposed to be. So the process was very slow. We had to go step by step, and several times some of the initial curves that were made initially, we had to relook at them, we had to destroy a couple of them, then slowly got some sort of a hold of it, where we could develop something that was very interestingly could be made out of it. So the whole journey was very experiential. Even in terms of the interiors, we tried to bring in those kind of concrete elements inside it. So predominantly one was the biggest staircase. Staircase was a very big challenge, how we could execute it and to make it. And so all of them was precast concrete, hung onto it, and it was bolted into it, and how undersides of it were very curved and created that kind of the poetry, the concrete poetry, which was essential for the project. And then it was also like this minor details of even how the beams were made. Instead of having a standard frame beam structure, we curved the beam surface till it to create that kind of encave like structure, or even on the inside. So those have to be deliberately made, and these decisions were made hand in hand right from the beginning. So these small little decisions, how it has affected the entire project, and how the project has shaped out in terms of how the light is playing a role, and how people are looking at the project, and how integrated greenery into it at very subtle level. Yet the project looks very spectacular, and the biggest feedback shows somebody about this project is that the first question what they ask is that, is it really made or is it a render? And the next thing what they ask is that, oh, is it really made in this part of the country? So this is something that where we have pushed ourselves as a boundaries as a team, and worked hand in hand, which makes really that particular project that really unusual or unlike many other projects.